One of the greatest needs we have as humans is to be seen, right? And so if a partner feels invisible in their marriage, that's such a painful place to be.
It's so descriptive, isn't it?
Yeah.
To feel as if no one sees you, no one understands your pain. But couples that have this egalitarian relationship actually build resilience through the storms of life. They're able to recover more quickly when their power is shared. We also want to offer ideas as to how to move from authoritarian marriage to a healthier egalitarian marriage. And I want to remind our listeners, this will require a joint discussion. Have you ever longed to be able to talk about values and morals or faith and spirituality without feeling judged? Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Mindful Moments, Insights to Empower the Soul. This podcast will empower you to embrace your true self. Hi, I'm Dr. Debi Gilmore.
And I'm Sharilyn Green, and we are so excited to be here today to talk about important subjects that are so near and dear to our heart. Debbie, as we started this, I was thinking about how passionate we both are about marriages, especially all relationships, but the complexity of marriage we're well aware of, and yet it's such a beautiful part of life. So today I'm excited about the topic we're going to discuss because it has to do with marriages. And we work a lot with couples and we hear things that we hope to help with and understand. Sometimes in a marriage, we find that one person feels powerless or even invisible. We see that the important decisions are kind of always made by one partner without consulting with another. And our radar goes up a little bit when we see some things like this. So we want to talk about these types of marriages, a couple of types of marriages today, and we're excited to do so.
You know, I heard one of my clients years ago, you used the word invisible, and I want to just talk about that. She was sitting on my couch, the couple comes in and she says, I just feel invisible. And it struck me. I was thinking, what a great way to describe something so painful and lonely, the longing to be seen. And so in our work with premarital or newlywed couples, we often hear them say, we're trying to figure this out. We have a new relationship and we don't know our roles, but we want to make sure that we stay happy. So we use a term, egalitarian. I used to think is so clinical, but it's an important word that describes very well a healthy balance in a relationship. So as these new couples or even older couples that have been in their relationship for a while, we want you to consider, how are you doing in your power balance? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Debbie, you just said the healthiest and most balanced, most fulfilling relationships are egalitarian, and it's a great word for an equal partnership, equal power, equal decision-making. Yeah, just all of those ways that influence equality. As I say that, it's important to note that it's not about identical roles, right? It's more about mutual respect, a shared authority, flexible roles, collaborative leadership, all of these things that are shaped by the couple's values, not by necessarily rigid gender norms. So it's important to distinguish that, I think, as we talk about equality.
Yeah, I like the word collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we collaborate, we're not really compromising. Compromise means giving up something.
Mm-hmm.
Collaborating means we put it all in the bowl, we mix it up and have a wonderful salad, a blend. So let's talk about egalitarian and what that kind of marriage looks like. This relationship, egalitarian as opposed to authoritarian, and we are going to designate the difference later. What are the characteristics of an egalitarian marriage? Both partners feel like they have an equal voice in the decisions that are made. Now, that can be tricky sometimes because one might have a stronger opinion about the decision than the other. But if both partners have confidence in their ability to influence decisions and the conversation flows both ways, neither partner dominates or controls the outcome of the other. Egalitarian couples value a process of, well, I guess we could use the word negotiation rather than a hierarchy of one over the other. So those are important things. And you, as you're listening, you can think, How are we doing? Where are we in this balance level? Another thing to think about is I think you said this earlier, Sharilyn. Both partners are flexible and are actually driven by value-based roles. So, what does that mean? Roles that are chosen based on each person's strengths and their needs, roles that aren't determined by gender. An egalitarian marriage doesn't really necessarily consider gender as much as strengths and abilities and the circumstances. Because think about it, as children grow and move through developmental stages, the marriage changes as well. So roles that were established earlier need to be able to change and adjust. Maybe at the earliest stage of the marriage, one was the breadwinner, the other was the homemaker. And maybe as children get older, both go out into the workforce. Roles need to change. They need to be able to shift over time without conflict or feeling shame.
I'm loving this, the way that you're describing this so specifically. It's great. And in these committed relationships that so many of us are in, they do have to be balanced. And I love that word. There's a balance to what you're talking about, right? And there's an ability to kind of cultivate an emotional reciprocity.
I'll say it for you, reciprocity.
Thank you, reciprocity. So I love this. Each partner's inner world, it matters to each other. You know, that's such a characteristic of this kind of beautiful relationship that's equal in every way. So any tasks that require emotional support, any household roles, mental loads, you know, women especially carry mental loads as we're trying to tick everything off. They're shared consciously with each other. So in other words, you know, at the end of a difficult day, especially a difficult work day, this kind of couple is able to set aside time to debrief and distress without fear of kind of offering others fixes or shutting them down or even withdrawing from the conversation.
I want to add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think of this mental load that particularly women carry. We do multitask. I like to think of it as we're spinning a whole bunch of plates, and every once in a while, we need to be able to stop and say, "Hey, honey, can you spin this eighth plate? It's going to spin off and break. Can you help me?" And to be able to do that and shift and ask for help is so important.
Yeah, and as you're talking about that, you know, we've made so much progress in those ways. I see so many young married men that really grab the plates well, better than maybe some of our generation. And
Yeah.
so it's a beautiful transition that's been happening. So yeah, egalitarian relationships, they include what we call a collaborative leadership. In other words, each partner leads in the roles where they have expertise. But that leadership needs to be transparent and consensual. And so, as we've said, you know, we're kind of honoring the strengths of each person. It's so wise. It's such a wise stewardship of those resources. And the equal sharing of those responsibilities can actually include switching roles if someone's sick, if they're not able to perform their typical duties. It can be extremely trust building and reassuring to be able to kind of throw that back and forth when needed, and the other person grab that plate when it comes spinning off. Yeah.
Especially when there's illness or some sort of curveball that the couple gets hit by, to be able to just in tandem switch and, step up. I want to pause and talk about equity. This world is not fair. We live in an unfair world. And as humans, we make mistakes and we are flawed, and that's okay in our imperfections. But egalitarian couples do establish some level of equity, not just in household roles, but also in parenting. So let's think about that for a minute. Each partner accepts some level of responsibility for the children, and tasks are distributed as fair as possible. It's hard to be fair when it comes to children because they throw us curveballs too. But the roles don't necessarily measure out to be 50-50. But as a couple, when deciding on roles, the responsibilities of both parties in an egalitarian relationship, they align with their available time. Now, that's an important term as well. Available time, emotional and physical capacity, because that ebbs and flows as well. Think about the seasons of life and those explicit agreements, things that we've made very clear in the relationship.
As you're talking, you know, we're both married to doctors. I was just thinking about that. And, you know, there were seasons for us, weren't there?
Yeah.
when they had, so many demands on them and we had to pick up a little bit more. And so just to your point, there's an ebb and flow to this and seasons that have to be honored as we do our best. But the overall thrust is further when we allow that to happen. So one of the exciting things that I love about this is how empirically supported an egalitarian marriage is. There's been extensive research and so much evidence of the benefits of such a relationship that encourage the equal sharing of power. Power imbalances are an important part of our work, Debi. We watch for that and we sit with clients and make sure that that's being balanced in a way that honors both people.
It's so important that our listeners know that we base this on research, solid research. You mentioned that. Now, what we want to stress is this is valid and this is powerful when followed. Hundreds of studies, if not thousands of studies have been done. So sorry to interrupt.
No, I'm so
on
glad
that
you
here.
put an exclamation point on that.
Yeah.
So as you just said, Debbie, the research shows that there's higher relationship satisfaction. There's better conflict resolution. There's greater sexual satisfaction. There's lower rates of resentment and burnout. There's more resilient co-parenting. And there's faster recovery from stress or transitions like a new baby, career shifts. I mean, honestly, the benefits of this, as empirically supported, are massive. And so, again, as you pointed out, it's not about splitting everything 50-50. It's about making sure that power and voice and responsibility are shared in ways that feel fair to both partners. Each of you gets to lead in the areas you're strong in. You collaborate on major decisions. And the goal is that neither of you feels dominated or that word invisible, like you talked about. You both feel valued in the daily running of your life together. I want to just pause on that word invisible. One of the greatest needs we have as humans is to be seen, right? We long to be seen. And so if a partner feels invisible in their marriage, that's such a painful place to be. It's such an important part of this type of marriage.
It's so descriptive, isn't it?
Yeah.
To feel as if no one sees you, no one understands your pain or your loneliness or your struggle. But couples that have this egalitarian relationship actually build resilience through the storms of life, whether it's literal or figurative storms. They're able to be resilient and recover more quickly when the power is shared. So I want us to talk about some assessments that you can do, questions you can use to assess your relationship. As far as power and voice, ask these questions. Who makes the final decision when you disagree? Isn't that an interesting question? Notice, is there one that tends to make the final decision? And that change can be difficult if there is this pattern of, well, you might have an opinion, but I'm going to decide. So see if you can switch that up a little bit. And that requires collaboration. Also, whose preferences are prioritized day to day? Can you switch it up? Maybe even explicitly decide in the morning, today, I'm going to allow my partner to be the priority and their preferences are prioritized today, kind of like a birthday day. Well, could we do that more often? Now, another area, and here's some questions to ask about roles and fairness. How do you determine what's fair in dividing tasks? What do you use to determine that? And are there tasks that either partner resents? Ask yourself, do I resent having to always take the garbage out? Maybe you can sit with each other and decide, well, should we switch it up a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah. And for the invisible partner, that can be hard to do, hard to ask, for their needs and for their thoughts. And we understand that. Just ongoing questions to consider what kind of relationship you're in, emotional work. Who notices tension first? Who initiates the repair? And who keeps track of the schedules, the birthday, the social needs, all of those emotional needs? More to ask concerning money and career, or how are financial decisions made? Who makes those? How is that done? And are both careers valued equally, even if income differs? Another really good question to ask.
So, how about if we shift gears a little bit here and talk about authoritarian relationships versus egalitarian? Again, these are kind of clinical words, but they're important to understand. Authoritarian is an unhealthy, imbalanced relationship. Egalitarian relationships are the ideal, but we do, like I said earlier, live in a less than ideal world. So let's talk about some of the traits of authoritarian marriage. They involve one partner having much more power and even the perceived authority than the other. We also want to offer ideas as to how to move from authoritarian marriage to a healthier egalitarian marriage. And I want to remind our listeners this will require a joint discussion to identify, oops, we're out of balance. Let's see if we can shift.
Yeah, so to get into maybe more of a deep dive on the authoritarian characteristics, one, of course, is the power dynamics in the relationship. And so, unlike the power dynamics of an egalitarian marriage, one partner usually does hold the primary power. This means, again, when it comes to decision making, the other spouse is kind of expected to comply. And it often means that one partner feels the need to ask for permission to kind of justify their needs or defer to the partner holding the greatest power. Behaviors and attitude by the authoritarian partner often can feel very controlling. It's also important to understand that the authoritative partner has had to learn a way of coping in life and relationships that is unhealthy. I love that. There's some compassion for this, right? It's often not, I don't know, even conscious sometimes. They've had to just survive somehow with their own experiences in life. And I love bringing up that point. I think it's important to understand that. Were you going to say something, Debbie?
Yes, I was just going to say we grow up with models of what it looks like to be a couple. And maybe in an authoritarian relationship, that's what they grew up with. And so it's expected subconsciously. It's just something that they expect. And so then, one partner ends up feeling invisible, but doesn't tell their other partner because they don't want to rock the boat or disappoint them. And so there is a learning curve here. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, just to your point, they've had to learn a way to cope. And a lot of times they fear uncertainty, unpredictability, and that causes them to make kind of extreme efforts on their part to create a sense of order and control of their environment. And honestly, yeah, just as we've talked about, this is often subconscious, just ways they've learned to kind of survive maybe chaotic circumstances in their lives. It can often feel like malice, but it isn't. It's actually stemming from fears and deep insecurity. So when we talk about roles in an authoritative marriage, it's often rigid. They are rigid roles. One leads and one follows. Household chores are often out of balance. They fall in disproportionate ways to the partner with reduced safety and power. And any questioning about this imbalance or desire for more flexibility in rigid roles can kind of trigger conflict or criticism. So some more kind of signals about how things are working.
As I think about what you said about the rigid roles where one leads, one follows, there's nothing like hearing your partner say, what do you think? What would you feel most fulfilled? If we're going to switch up roles here, what do you think? Wow. So I matter. You really want to know. But we also have a balance of personalities. One might really enjoy having the other more in charge, but that doesn't mean unequal voice. So it's encouraging the voice, but allowing maybe the other to, dominate in a healthy way. So now, emotional climate, I like to term it that way because the climate of the relationship really is determined by emotional safety. So what if you find yourself in a relationship where you feel like you have to walk on eggshells? Okay. Or you're more driven by fear or anxiety. This damages the emotional climate, removes emotional safety of the relationship. So communication needs to be wide open and I'm going to say legal, open communication. So in an authoritarian relationship, communication is actually corrective, maybe even dismissive or contemptuous. In an authoritarian relationship, instead of curiosity or a desire to understand, there is resulting criticism. And criticism attacks who we are. That's really painful. Vulnerability is unsafe. You can't talk about your painful emotions without worrying that you'll be judged or shamed. You fear that your vulnerability will be used against you as a weapon. That's not okay. Researcher John Gottman, I love quoting his research because that's what he did. He revealed research that helped us determine how to help couples and apply models of therapy. So he found that when husbands accept the influence from their wives, their relationship thrives and actually stabilizes. Now, I don't want husbands that are listening to think, oh, I have to give in all the time. No, accepting influence means thank you for sharing your opinion. That's really important to me. It doesn't mean agreeing with the other either. It means showing respect and a willingness to be influenced by the other's opinion. So that's important. Now, conflict style in authoritarian relationships, disagreements are driven by the partner with more power. So the high-powered partner uses pressure or withdrawal, pulling away, abandoning or ignoring, guilt and intimidation to win. These are extremes that we're talking about. We like to use the extremes to prove a point. But that pressure that the high-powered partner uses, they might even use stonewalling, which means completely shutting down, silent, appearing to not care or not be present, blame shifting. I mean, these are extremes, Sharilyn. So I want our listeners to understand that emotional punishment can feel like a shutdown and withdrawal, and that dominates the interaction. So that's very unhealthy.
Yeah, and just as we talked about the incredible research supporting egalitarian marriages, the same is true of authoritarian marriages. We know empirically that there's very negative long-term outcomes. And sadly, don't just affect the marriage, but the whole family system is impacted by this. We know that couples experience higher conflict, deeper resentment, more emotional distance. There can be an increased risk of emotional abuse or coercive control, and sadly, partners start to lose their authenticity, their autonomy, and their connection. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking it's not good for either partner. It's not, the partner with more power, maybe using some coercion, or they can't feel good about this either. And so neither person wins in this type of relationship.
Yeah, I read an article. There's this new thing called quiet quitting husbands, where wives have just quietly withdrawn and pulled away. Now, this is an article on the wives that pull away, but I think this is not gender specific, where if there is so much power imbalance, where one just gives up, gives in, it's not divorce, it's disconnection. They sleep in separate rooms. They take separate vacations. They just live separately, not even as roommates. And this is a trend that's happening. And it's typically because of these power imbalances.
Wow, I'm so glad you told me about that. That's so interesting. Yeah, so we love attachment language. That's what we're all about. And so we know incredibly well that an authoritarian marriage will create an insecure attachment with a lot of anxiety over what, you must do or say to be safe. Like you just talked about, there's avoidant behaviors that start to negate needs. They start to minimize to avoid conflict. Emotional needs often go unmet. I mean, we go on and on with some of the fallout of this. And so if we could just sum up kind of all we've talked about so far in our discussion today, in a simple way, we'd say that authoritarian marriages are built on fear, hierarchy, and reactivity, while egalitarian marriages are built on safety, reciprocity, and partnership.
Well, those are big words.
Like best.
It's just this synergy. I want to use that word. It might even be described as a ballet that has been choreographed over time. I kind of like describing it that way because it does take practice. So what can you do if you recognize these negative traits in your marriage? Well, you know that we are biased, and we would suggest to seek help from an emotionally focused therapist to bring awareness to the imbalance. Emotionally focused therapy is a powerful way to gain insight into your own negative patterns and how you interact with each other, and that reinforces negative patterns. Both partners have to agree to change. So it means having a conversation and saying, we've got some imbalance here. Can we work toward a better way? Relationship needs rebalancing of power. So the relationship would need to be able to say, this is what I hope for, this is what I need, and what do you need? Let's put it all on the table. The imbalance may have occurred from the family of origin. We talked about that. So it's influence without realizing it. And maybe today we outline things that you're realizing, oh, this is familiar. So emotional safety actually is restored when you have these conversations. It comes back if you haven't had it. So the attachment system in general has to feel safe, and it will if you have this kind of a conversation.
Yeah, it's so important to be hopeful about this. It can be restored, the emotional safety, and the attachment system can come back and feel secure again. And so we want to state again, we of all people in our own personal lives and in our work know that there's no perfect relationship that doesn't have challenges. And we hope no one's worried today about, all the things that we've talked about, because there are so many things that can be done to quietly and improve security, equality, and safety. And so some of the things we would suggest is to name the pattern, not the person. Clarify that the goal is mutual influence, not blame. It's important to establish safety rules that are non-negotiable, as this is kind of being rebalanced. No yelling, no demeaning or moralizing, no stonewalling, as you talked about, Debi, as a punishment, no threatening divorce to win, no flipping blame, just emotional regulation. It's such an important emotional skill, is to stay emotionally regulated. And so you can start to feel this rebalance of power if that's been missing when there's shared decision making. Again, transparency. That's such a key word in this, right? When there's complete transparency between two partners around finances, schedules, and children, no unilateral decisions are being made. There's a high accountability for emotional behavior for both partners. And the high powered partner must be able to say, your perspectives matter. Please help me understand. And the low-powered partner has to be able to use their voice and express their needs without apologizing and actually believe that their needs are legitimate. So there's work on both sides of this fence to be done.
And we're teaching the ideal.
Yes.
I want to remind people this is not teaching perfectionism and that's required. It's not possible, actually. But
No.
even a small adjustment in a marriage feels huge to both parties.
Mm.
And if that goal is to make a small adjustment regularly, over time, that adds up. So, some signs that the marriage is becoming more egalitarian. And let me add this too. Egalitarian is not a religious term. It is not. Authoritarian isn't a religious term. This is a scientific term that does describe an equal sharing of power. So, a marriage that's becoming more egalitarian includes emotional safety, vulnerability. You're able to be emotional or vulnerable with your partner without feeling punished. It involves curiosity and seeking understanding. I love the three most important words I tell couples is help me understand. Decisions are collaborative. There's equal sharing in that. It's brainstorming, actually. Repairs happen quickly. When there's been a painful incident, you quickly seek the repair. Boundaries are honored. Boundaries is not a bad word or a disconnecting word. It's the way to set up the relationship to be protected. And love is mutual, not conditional. So we've outlined the benefits of egalitarian relationships and the cost of authoritarian relationships. It's not easy to shift out of an imbalance of power. In fact, it can be quite painful and sometimes scary. But change begins, first step, with awareness. And really, having a therapist, if you find yourselves stuck, having a therapist to guide the process really does help, even if it's short term. So let's do our therefore what, Sharilyn?
Yeah, so I guess what's has kind of stuck out to me as we've talked is maybe in my work as a therapist with couples when there's a power imbalance is to address this part that we talked about where it's not necessarily malice of the partner who's controlling, to be able to, with compassion and like tenderness, actually, walk with them into some of those ways that it was maybe modeled for them, or they learned that this is the way to control life, takes me out of anxiety, whatever that part is for them. I want to be more sensitive to that, more understanding of that, more competent about that part of these relationships. So I think that's my therefore what, and it's something kind of in my work that I want to get better at.
Oh, I love that you're going to apply this to your work, but I already know you do, Sharilyn. I've seen your beautiful work with couples. Mine's more personal. I'm sitting here realizing as we went through the differences between egalitarian and authoritarian relationships, I am so grateful for a husband who encouraged me once our kids were in school, said, "You go, girl, you go find your dream that you've waited 25 years for." And so really fully supported me in going back to school, getting my various degrees, and went to school way too many years. But the support in our egalitarian relationship, I am so grateful. So I think my therefore what is, I'm going to go tell him how grateful I am for that support.
I
We
love
want
that.
we want to thank you all for listening to us today, and we hope you'll spread the word that we're out here and send us ideas for topics.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We love doing this and love having you join us. Thank you so much.